This blue die is a boost die. Symbol on top is for success. Also on this die is a blank, and this symbol, this wreath symbol, which stands for advantage. Now, a success is a success. Okay? Do I succeed or not? You're looking for these. Even if you don't succeed, you can still gain an advantage in some way, and that's by getting these symbols. Blank means nothing, and the die also has combinations of things, a success and an advantage, or multiple advantages. Okay, so this is the boost die. This die is used for boosts, aids, another character in the group lending help, or having beneficial equipment, or some sort of benefit in the scene. Now this is determined by the GM giving one, or negotiation or discussion among the players about what should be there, as carried out as in character as possible. The boost die. The boost die is countered by the setback die. The symbol on top here is for failure. This other symbol is threat. Failure cancels success, threat cancels advantage. The next die, this green D8, is the skill die. This is the core of the die roll. It has success and blank and advantage on it as well, in the same sorts of types, doubles and singles. It's countered by the difficulty die, which has threats and failures on it as well. These two types of dice can be upgraded. The difficulty die can be upgraded by the Game Master to a challenge die, and the skill die can be upgraded by the player to a proficiency die. Now, these are D12s instead of D8s, right? So more opportunities for things like doubles, as you can see, but also the opportunity for this single symbol to come up, the triumph symbol, or on the challenge die, one we don't want to see, despair. Now, while these dice are set up to cancel each other out, these symbols do not fully cancel. Part of the triumph, as you can see, is a starburst. That indicates success. That can be canceled out by a failure. But the rest, the triumph aspect of it, will remain. And triumph is more than advantage. It's something that could trigger a critical hit or a special effect, or something special in the scene, even if the character fails. Right now, if you think through Star Wars, you'll find lots of examples where the characters don't exactly succeed, and these symbols and the advantage symbols come from such scenes. Despair is the same way. The failure aspect of it, you can see the pointy, elongated triangle, that can be canceled out by success, but despair remains. So a hollow victory of some kind. The white die is the force die. It has black dots and white dots on it, and these represent the dark and light side of the force. This is used, of course, when you're a force user, but also to determine a pool of points that can be spent by the Game Master, the dark side, and the players, the light side. Those are the dice.
There are a lot of different ways to determine results in a role-playing game. Going way back to the beginning, you simply, let's say, roll a d20, needing to beat a number on that, to roll high. Rolling high only meant success. Rolling low only meant failure. There was no special attribute assigned to rolling a 20 or a natural anything. This evolved in play. This is an emergent property of play, which was later incorporated back into the whole experience, so that rolling a 20 did something. And the reason why this is necessary is really the psychology of rolling. And moving from that, we get a more openly percentile-based system, which involves things like criticals and fumbles if you roll extremely low, or if you below a certain threshold as it compares to your character's abilities, or above a certain threshold as relates to your character's ability, then you get some kind of special effect. In BRP, this was called an impale, for example, if you rolled really low, which was good. Rolling low was good. And then there are things like margins of success or margins of failure, which in other games like Savage Worlds might be called raises. So if you beat the number you're looking for by a certain amount, like every 4 in A Time of War or every 4 in Savage Worlds, adding some kind of perk or benefit to the outcome of the roll. It's a new way to interpret what's going on in a die roll, so it's not just pass or fail. In Edge of the Empire, the die mechanic does all of those things, but it also goes a step further into the narrative realm that normally has just existed in the mind of the game master. And it's just another logical extension of the development of play. What I mean by that is, way back in the beginning, rolling that d20 and trying to beat a target number, the game master is thinking, wow, he rolled a natural 20. I should make that special in some way. And of course the player is having the same sort of thought, wow, I can't roll any higher than that. Is this special in some way? And this becomes a culture of play. And interpreting die rolls has always been the purview of the game master. And it's been an internal and hidden process based on so many factors, like the mood at the table, or the particular events going on in the story, or the relationship between the adversaries represented in the scene, and so on and so on. Those who prefer a more story gaming style, who are trying to create the feel of a particular type of fiction, they might be very sensitive to rising or falling action, or to the beats of the story. And those who aren't, those who are more interested in things happening as they may, are more interested in trying to interpret that dice roll so that it accurately reflects the abilities and the experience and the situation. Right? In both cases, the work is the same. The game master is looking at a number or a number of successes and assessing what should be the narrative interpretation of that. What the dice pool in Edge of the Empire does is externalize that process and add in elements that you then have to improvise on the fly, giving you a lot of the fun that the players have, taking away the position of just being an arbiter of outcomes and turning you into more of an active creator right there. So you might roll and the character scores 3 or 4 successes, which is fantastic, but that's tempered by a threat.
Suddenly, you need to not only just determine what the results are, you need to create. You need to improvise how that can be. How will threat be a part of succeeding in this case? So let's take a look at an example. For our example, let's use astrogation. Let's assume that the governing characteristic is a 3. So the character in question who needs to make the astrogation check has an intellect of 3. And they have a skill of 2. That skill of 2 will allow them to trade in 2 of their skill dice for 2 proficiency dice. Okay, so this is the basis of their die pool. Okay. Now, if it were standard difficulty, meaning it was just a normal astrogation check, and they had that skill of 2, and there's no time pressure or anything like that, there would really be no need to roll. It would just be a standard thing, nothing really going awry, unless you wanted to introduce the dice into that situation in order to see, what, narrative insertions happened as a result of the presence of the dice. But if this is something that you just wanted to get by, anything with a standard difficulty versus a skill of 2, you don't need to roll. So why would they need to roll in this case? Well, they might be trying to get where they're going faster, increasing the difficulty. They might need to calculate the astrogation information more quickly than is normal. They might be doing so with damaged equipment or while injured or whatever, under the stress of a visiting senator yelling at them, for example. So in this case, it won't be standard difficulty. Let's say that we have a difficulty of 3. All right. Now, let's say that they are getting assistance from a droid skilled with astrogation, but who is not trusted to actually get them where they're going. Right? And setback of, short circuits in the computer system due to aged wiring. All right. Now, as the game master, points might be spent to introduce a challenge die rather than leaving it be difficulty die. But for this example, let's just leave things as they are. So this is our pool. We have 2 dice for our different setbacks. We have a boost die for some advantage that the character has. We have our pool of difficulty, and we have the character's proficiency, right, to handle it. So we would simply roll. Okay? Now bringing everything back together so it can be seen inside the field of view of the camera. This is what we have. Okay? Look at all the threats. Okay? Now, one of the setback dice, right, narratively contributes nothing. It's removed. Okay? We have 1 success on the skill die. We have 1 success on the boost die, right, giving us a total of 2 successes, but we have 1 failure from one of the setback dice, right? So narratively, I can just, cancel these out and ignore them, or I can actually make this part of my narration, that the character was coming along fine, but, right, that faulty wiring caused a short, right? Something like that. These are gone. This leaves me with 1 success, right? There's nothing to directly counter that success, and I'm left with 1, 2, 3, 4 advantage symbols. But these are canceled by threats. Those 4 threats, those 3 triumph symbols, and this triumph symbol are deleted, leaving a success under threat. Okay? So now my job is to determine, to interpret, to improvise according to the character, according to the scene, according to everything that went before and what's going to happen next, something in tune with the genre of Star Wars that makes the game fun and interesting. How can this successful astrogation check, which was hampered, right, by setbacks and difficulty, put our characters under some kind of negative cloud, right? Did they make it easy to track them where they're going? Will it be easier for their opposition to either figure out or follow them directly to where they're going? That might be one interpretation. Or it might be that pushing through the setback caused a future problem to become more likely. I might assign more setback dice the next time they make an astrogation check. It's really open to interpretation. But suddenly, right there, the dice drop, and you need to come up with something sensible. And it's fun. Really fun. So in a nutshell, a slightly longer nutshell than I intended, that's a look at interpreting the dice for Edge of the Empire and the games which will follow. I hope it was useful, and if anyone has any suggestions or wants to talk about how to use the dice better in play, please leave a comment and let's talk.